Hello, everyone. Welcome to First Fridays. Our guest this morning is Ann Byle. Ann is a freelance writer for publications such as Publishers Weekly and Grand Rapids Magazine, and she's the co-founder of Breathe Christian Writers Conference. She's worked in publishing as an advertising copywriter, marketing writer, newspaper copy editor, freelance writer, and book reviewer. So she's really got quite a diverse background, which I think will make for a very interesting conversation today. Welcome, Ann. It's really good to have you here.
Well, thank you, Brian. It's fun to be here today.
So, I briefly ran through the different things that you've done, but can you go into a little bit more detail about what each of those are like?
Well, my first job out of college was at Moody Publishing, Moody Press then, where I wrote book jacket copy and some advertising copy, a catalog copy. That was fun. I learned how to write copy, sell copy, but also write from a whole lot of nothing sometimes. Sometimes you had to write copy from 2 paragraphs. So that was an interesting way to look at book publishing and to learn about it. And then I, from there, worked at the Grand Rapids Press, where I was a copy editor for 8 years. And that is a whole different gig. That is working on deadline, writing cut lines, editing stories, all of that stuff in a hurry each day. So I there learned how to, you work because you got to work, and that's the way of it. And you meet a deadline because you got to meet a deadline. There's no messing around with that. Also learn to have a thick skin, because newspaper people will tell you how it is and their opinion of you. But I still miss the newsroom a lot. And there I was also the book review editor. So I got kind of into assigning reviews, reviewing some myself, doing page layout on that. From there, I wrote advertising and marketing copy for Our Daily Bread Ministries. Then it was RBC Ministries. But so that was kind of an interesting thing to look at, a whole different way of reaching people. A little bit of a culture shock between the Grand Rapids Press and there. Had to learn to be real quiet and nice and all that. But I liked doing that. And then I began freelancing, and I've been freelancing for 22 years. So freelancing has been a lot of different things: magazine writing, book writing, writing books for people. But all of those past experiences really fed into being able to create a freelance career, even as I had some more babies and raised those kids while I was writing.
Well, as I said, I think that, your whole saga and all the different things that you've been involved in, first of all, it's really interesting. And secondly, this whole series that we do is about the business of being a spiritual writer. So a lot of the folks that are newer to writing don't really know the lay of the land beyond just writing a book, particularly from an income stream perspective. So, I think that, being able to, have the benefit of your experience is going to be really helpful to folks. So how would you see, clearly things like newspaper, right, copy editing, newspapers in general, right, have declined dramatically.
Oh, yeah.
They were, 20, 30 years ago.
And I don't write for the newspaper anymore.
Yeah.
They don't have freelancers anymore.
So how else would you see that kind of those different segments of the industry have changed, since you've been involved?
Well, I would say newspapers for sure. I worked in the newsroom in the heyday when you had investigative reporters and you had copy editors and editors. I think one of the biggest issues is that there's so few people between writer and public. And that's scary, because nowadays, often reporters are asked to write the story, take the pictures, post them all, and there you go. Well, who's reading those between? So you get typos and you get crazy stuff and you go back and fix stuff. But I think that's one big thing, is there's fewer people between writer and reader, especially in the newspaper business. Also, you have to know a lot more stuff. You have to be media savvy. You have to know how to take a picture and post it. So that means you have to know what a good picture is. So I haven't worked in newspaper since 2012, when the Grand Rapids Press let go 99% of their freelancers and about 30% of their staff. And then more and more people left. So the upside to newspaper writing, if you could get it, is that you learn how to write to a deadline. You can't wait for creativity or inspiration to hit, because you know what? That story's due. So that's a good muscle to develop, and one that I've been grateful through over the years, really since then.
Well,
As far as, go ahead.
no, I was just say, since you do so much freelance writing now, can you talk a little bit about the different segments within freelance writing, and the different types of opportunities, I guess I should say?
It's so interesting. There's as prolific as digital content or digital media is, they still need content. They still have to have stories to post. They still have to have things. So if you can tap into writing digitally, people think, well, it's not really writing if you can't see it in your hand, hold it in your hand and see your byline. Well, yes, it is. So look at that. I just talked to somebody today who has a full-time writing job with a boutique clothing and fancy home goods store. Well, who would have thought that they would hire a full-time writer to talk about their catalogs, their catalog copy, to write their catalog copy. So I think there's a lot of that involved. You can do a lot of product writing. You can do reviews of books, movies, podcasts. There's still traditional magazine writing. There's still investigative reporting. I know here in Michigan, our newspaper sort of world went down, and therefore the reporting went down, and a group started a whole new nonprofit investigative reporting organization called Bridge Michigan, and they do some beautiful work. I've been very impressed with that. So there's a lot of different ways out there. I mean, freelance writing can be for big business. People need internal stories written for their newsletter. Hospitals, one of our biggest employers here in West Michigan is Spectrum, and a lot of press reporters and photographers have gone to work for them. So you write stories about patients, you write stories about innovation. So there's a lot of people who need writers. They may not know they need a writer because they think they can do it and they can't. But I was just asked to do, I'll pick up this job later in July, but for a local nonprofit, they need somebody to tell their people's stories. So there's a difference between being able to talk to people and hear their stories, but being able to write it. So that's where I come in. I can hear their stories, but I can write it. Well, who would have thought that nonprofit would be able to hire me? So freelance writing opportunities are everywhere if you know where to look for them.
So with the advent of the internet, in a lot of different areas, there's an expectation that things are free as opposed to, paying for them. Mm-hmm. But the kinds of things you're talking about are paid freelance writing gigs, right?
Yes. I don't usually write for free. I don't have to, but I will. I will sometimes do that, but that's a good way to start if you're starting a freelance career, is to write some free copy or take $10 for something. So I write for, I won't tell you the name, but it's a pretty well-known organization or publication for Christian writers. And they pay diddly, nothing practically, but I still do it because that's an investment for me. I get to meet writers. I get to be in that publication. So sometimes it's okay to write for free, especially as a beginner, but don't keep doing it. Sure. You get your foot in the door, and then you should be paid for what you're good at doing. Now, you may not get paid from that same place, because if they only want free stuff, but you can use that. You can then get your virtual clip file and use that to get other paying jobs.
So you've been in this for a long time. You've got a great reputation. So you probably, get a lot of referrals and repeat business and things like that. Mm-hmm. For someone who's new, how should they start searching for, writing opportunities?
I would go local first. So
because you're more likely to be known, sort of? Or,
well, or you don't have to, like if you wanted to write for, say, a local, even a hyper-local digital magazine, they're always looking for writers. Start there, hone your skills there, and then expand out. you can write for a local, like the Grand Rapids Press, even though they don't take freelancers anymore, but that was a good place to start. There's other places. I know we have several smaller magazines, digital magazines, and that would be a good place. I mean, you could even start with your church website. What you're looking for is proof that you can write and make a deadline, and somebody wants to publish your writing. So that's your goal. And that starts small, and then you can grow bigger and bigger, because then you have the experience. You can say, oh, look, here's what I did for, this local place, and I did these stories, and an editor looks at them and says, oh, good. You can write and you can make a deadline. Good for you. Let me give you a try. What you can't expect is to walk in and do a front page story, a main story, a big feature piece right off the bat, because the editor doesn't know you. They don't know. And if they're counting on you for that 1,100 word piece and you frog around and you don't do it, well, guess what? You're not getting another job. But you could do a 3-paragraph front matter in the magazine, a little 3-paragraph piece on a local yoga studio. Well, you could do that. And then as you get those credits, you begin to do more things and more things. But start small, grow big.
So let's talk about editing a little bit, and particularly from more of a book, author perspective. What types of editing do you recommend that they get a freelancer for, whether or not they're traditional published?
Well, I think it can be tricky, because I've known writers who have paid way, way too much money for multiple levels of editing. My first piece of advice is finish the book. What you can't do is get halfway through, pay an editor, and then go back and change everything. Well, then what that editor did is moot. It's not valid anymore. So my first piece of advice is finish whatever project you have. Get it complete. Do some self-editing first. I will guarantee you, if you are a new writer, you can go back and cut 100 words out of a 1,000-word story. A book, you could probably cut 5,000 words out, just cutting the extra. So teach yourself to do that. There's lots of books that will help you, lots of tutorials. Angie Hunt did a beautiful thing with EPA not too long ago. Teach yourself, cut the fluff. And then as a novelist, especially a debut novelist, let's keep it at that, debut, or 1 or 2 books under your belt, hire someone who can give you a substantive edit, or have a lot of beta readers. I have a friend who's won 3 Christie Awards, and she still has beta readers read her book and make a tick every time they stop. So if you have 3 qualified friends read this for you because they're nice and they like you, and they all stop at the same spot, then you better fix that spot. So beta readers are a good choice if you don't have a lot of money or you don't know someone. But I think a substantive for a new novelist to look at character and story arc and plot. Is everything tied up? Do the characters change enough? Also, going to conferences and learning will help you with your own self-editing. I also think that there's sort of a mid-level between a complete substantive edit and a copy edit. Those are very different things. A copy editor or proofreader is only looking at spelling, grammar, punctuation. I think if you hire an editor, so I've done this a couple times, is to read a friend's book. It was pretty clean as far as, misspellings, that sort of thing. But I would have fixed those if they were there, and I did. But there were things like he had a character move into a brand new house, but there was no dishwasher. And I said, oh, no. If there's a brand new house, there's a dishwasher. So that kind of thing you might want to look at. Well, he didn't have a dishwasher in his house, and I don't have one in my house. Not that I would, give my left arm to have one, but that was something that I could catch and say, you know what, a new house would have one. So you want maybe somebody who can look at that too. Again, it could be a beta reader. What I caution is spending boatloads of money on editing that you don't need. So be careful of that. Ask good advice. Ask for people's advice on who they might recommend. look online. It's not an easy task to find somebody who has time and space to do that. Therefore, learn some self-editing skills to save yourself some money in the end.
Well, on the Writing for Your Life website, we do have a writer services page where, there are a few different editors, freelance editors who I recommend. They're both basically folks who have done this a lot, written their own books, so they're for people that I feel pretty confident in recommending.
A good editor is worth their weight in gold, seriously.
Yeah.
And if you can find a good one, it's worth every penny.
The bigger issue I find is that they're all busy, all the time. So it's difficult, to throw more business their way because they're busy, because they're good. They have reputations.
You're exactly right. So
how do you find that the different types of work that you do build on each other?
It's so, as I look back over the years, all of the relationships that I had with different jobs have yielded some interesting things. So my first job out of college was at Moody Publishing. Well, my ultimate boss was Jerry Jenkins. This was pre-Left Behind.
Wow.
So I left Moody on good terms. Well, Jerry grew up in West Michigan where I live. So when Left Behind became big, I could say to him, hey, Jerry, can I do a story for you for our religion section? Absolutely, Ann, no problem. So he also was part of my first book. He was also part of my second book, which was Christian Publishing 101, because he's in Christian publishing. I interviewed him for a story not too long ago. So I think building relationship and keeping those relationships healthy is a good thing, because you don't know who you might run into or who you might be able to use in a story later. So, but they do grow on each other. So just recently, I was asked to do a review of a book for, and this is a new group that I've been writing for, is the Banner, which is the Christian Reformed publication. Christian Reformed Church is based here in Grand Rapids. So I got asked to do a book review of a brand new book that's coming out in October. So I said to myself, I wonder if, because of the topic and because of who this author is, if Publishers Weekly would like maybe a Q&A with her. So I queried them, and lo and behold, they did. So I'm going to read one book, and I'm going to have 2 stories out of that. So that's how they can play off one another. You can't write for on the same topic in a competing market, but the Banner does not compete with Publishers Weekly.
Sure.
So you can do that. You can use the same information or the same interview or the same book for different places. And it always amazes me how many times the paths cross in various ways throughout the years. And you see that when you look back, you think, oh, well, I had that relationship with that person, and that led to this, and that led to another thing. So I also spent 5 years as an agent, and that I still feel the results of that in meeting people and connections at publishers and all sorts of things. So I guess my best piece of advice is don't burn your bridges. Do your best job, leave well, because you don't know what those relationships will yield later. I'm not sure that's the answer to your question.
No. I mean, as a matter of fact, when I do one of my seminars, my number one piece of advice is building relationships.
Well, Brian, that's why I'm here, because I did a story on you.
Right.
And for
Publishers Weekly.
Yeah, might have been Publishers Weekly.
Yeah, I think it was about publishing in color, wasn't it?
Right, exactly. So you sent that press release to them. They assigned me the story, and look where we are today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're both, missing the Festival of Faith and Writing this year.
Oh, my word, I can't even speak.
We were both there 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That's like the epitome of networking events within our industry. We're not getting this year, so.
Well, that's like 5 miles down the road from my house. And I mark me and my writers group mark a lot of events or big changes around the Festival of Faith and Writing.
Sure.
And I've been to most of them. I started writing about it when I was at the press, because that was a new book event. So I wrote about them in the early years, and I've been to almost every one. I know I didn't go to one because I was having a baby, so I thought that was a legit reason.
So what have you been able to do, since we've been in the pandemic, without in-person conferences for quite a few months here? Have you found any other ways to, meet new people?
My work has not changed. People still need content. I just don't go to in-person interviews if it's local. Do a lot with phone and Zoom. Publishers Weekly, they're in New York. I never would see them anyway. So I still have the same amount of work. I probably got more done. Well, let's just say I met deadlines earlier. I turned stuff in early because what am I doing? I'm not going to lunch with, so-and-so. But it has been a little bit hard because I'm used to working at my house by myself. And lo and behold, people are home working. So my husband's a teacher, so he was home. My daughter is now working from home. We got a puppy, which was not a good idea. And but I have my office, and so I have appreciated the much broader margins than I've had, and I think I will learn from that, is to have 2 or 3 days a week where I go nowhere and just stay home, and that's a good thing.
So another area of income for writers that we really haven't talked about much is getting speaking gigs.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I both produce conferences. So,
Mm-hmm.
you want to talk about, that aspect of a writer's, living and how it plays off their books and things like that?
Well, it's interesting because in this book, Christian Publishing 101, I interviewed Mary DeMuth, and she is a speaker and a writer. She says she spends 80% of her time on her writing, but makes 80% of her income from speaking.
Interesting.
Yeah. And she speaks on, a wide variety of topics. And if you want to make a living as a writer, you may want to add speaking in. Now, you can speak on your topics, or your very specific topics. You can also speak at writers' conferences, which I've done a lot of. You're not going to get rich doing that, but it's a great venue to get people to know your work, to make connections with other writers, which is just as important as making connections with editors or book publishers or whatever. So speaking is a good thing if you're not terrified to do it. I mean, some people just don't want to speak. Don't do it. Don't kill yourself to speak. But if you have something that you love to talk about, please do. So I help plan the Breathe Christian Writers Conference, which takes place in October here in Grand Rapids, which we postponed our in-person event. We're going to have a virtual event this year, which is, there were tears, and I even cried about that, but it was a good and wise move, I think, for many reasons. But you can still speak virtually. I mean, look what we're doing. And everybody we asked to, would you be willing to do a virtual workshop? Everyone said yes, they would do it.
Good. I've had the same kind of response with taking mine online too.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of grew up and got established before the whole concept of platform was quite as meaningful as it is today. But can you talk a little bit about what you do to build your platform?
Well, there's a lot of shoulds in my platform world. I should begin blogging again. I should have a podcast. Mostly I do Instagram. And I have this, it's under my name, but I have a hashtag writing with chickens, because I have these chickens. So when I go outside and write, the chickens come and like peer over my computer and everything. So people give me chicken things. So that's kind of my little shtick, is on Instagram. If you find my name, I use the hashtag writing with chickens, but it's under Ann Byle, and I get followers that way. It's surprising.
Because of the chickens.
Yeah. So, I post writing, and I'll talk about writing and look at, I'm doing this project, and here's this chicken helping me write. It was hilarious right at the beginning, because I would write outside, and all of a sudden here's this chicken coming right over my computer looking at me. So I took pictures, and people loved them. So now people send me gifts, they send me chicken stuff. We had chicken drama, so now everybody knows what happened with the chickens in the last couple of months. So I do Instagram because it's easy for me and fast, and it makes me laugh. Um, I should do more blogging because I interview authors all the time. It's like ready-made content. But I find that I tend to do deadline stuff first and not my own stuff, which is, probably why I'm in therapy or whatever. But there's a lot of shoulds with platform building. When I started in this business, publishers looked at content first and then platform. Now some publishers look at platform first or platform equally with content. It makes a lot of people crazy. Lots and lots of people crazy. Because it often, that means only, mega pastors or people with 1 million people on their blogs and all of that get published. There is still space for those without a huge platform. You just have to find it. But we didn't talk about this in our questions, Brian, but I think one of the biggest changes has been the advent of self-publishing is no longer the kiss of death for a book.
Yeah.
When I started at the press, I was a book review editor, so I would get books in the mail all the time. Well, I could 100% of the time tell a self-published book. One by the cover was always terrible. Sorry about that. And one by the editing, the writing and the editing. I could tell every time. Now that's no longer the case. Self-published books or custom published books, I would differentiate between the two, are much more accepted because of the way people buy. When you go to Amazon and you type in, say your child has been diagnosed with juvenile diabetes, if you type that in, all these books come up. You don't care who published them. You just want to read the content, right? Oh dear. Sorry about that. So because of the way people buy, content is king. It doesn't matter who publishes the book. And readers don't care. They don't care who published it. What they care about is if the book is good. So where you can custom publish a book, either print and ebook or ebook only, you have a lot of chance to get readers that you didn't have before because custom publishing and self-publishing has come such a long way. So that's a big change that I've seen.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the gatekeepers don't have quite the monopoly that they used to.
Exactly. And I think they're struggling because of that.
Yep, absolutely.
Bookstores are closing. I did the stories for Publishers Weekly on Family Christian's demise, and I've written about it many times. There just is not the physical stores that there used to be. So therefore people aren't walking in and hearing word of mouth about a particular book. What has not changed is that word of mouth is still important. What has changed is how. And how is word of mouth now? Facebook, your social media posts. Oh, I love this book. It's still word of mouth. It's just done differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So since you do so many different things, do you have any tricks that you use to balance all of that? Plus, not to mention your personal life, but I mean.
I thought about that question, and I thought, how do I balance it all? And I think for one thing, it's practice. I've done it for so long that it becomes sort of second nature, but I know how long a story will probably take to write. I know how long a book may take to write. So that comes with just practice. But, don't come to my house because it's not going to be clean. So forget that. I'm not a control freak, so I don't have to run everything, which is so draining and takes away all your time. Like I said, don't come. You're not eating off the floor at my house. So I have some things that I don't do. I don't do, my kids are out of high school. All my last kids are out of high school, fortunately. So I was never the room mom. I was never that kind of thing. I didn't do a lot of extra stuff like that. But balancing is here's what you have to do. How do you divide it out to what you need to do? What are the pieces that you need to put together? So I'm also a puzzler. I love to do puzzles. And to me, writing is like a puzzle. You get the pieces and you put them in. So I can know if I have these 3 interviews done and I'm going up to the UP without internet access, I can write it while I'm up there because it's all on my computer. So the balance is not working as much and enjoying life sometimes.
There you go.
Summer in Michigan is always a time to do fun stuff outside. So I do have to just be a little bit careful. I don't have any sound advice on that. I really thought about that. I
So
think
do you use like any task lists or calendar, things with your calendar?
I have a Franklin planner because I'm not a millennial and I'm not a digital native. So I just use my Franklin planner.
Okay.
I keep a list, but I also keep a list of, again, not online, of all the projects that I have. So I put when they're due, who it's for, what the pay is. So I'm not your most organized person, but these physical things help me. And people are always like, Ann or Mom, put your calendar on your phone. And I say, I once dropped my phone in the toilet, so it's not going on my phone. So I keep a physical list. I do that. And keep things in files so I know what I have to do. I don't, I probably haven't about once a year I forget an interview. And that's
we all do, even if you have it on your calendar. That happens.
Yeah. I've done that before. So not turn the page and like, oh, rats.
Yeah. So just to finish up, what kind of advice do you have for people who are just getting started in the writing careers?
Whether you want to do freelance writing, you want to write books. My first piece of advice is to be courageous. How many people want to write a book and they never do? And I am my own worst enemy in this. There's a project that I have that scares me, so I haven't done it. So, but being courageous means going to a conference, making those connections, sending out that query letter. Nothing happens if you do nothing. So my first step is always to have a little courage. My also is take the next right step. So God will illuminate your path, but not the whole path. So sometimes what the next right step is and take it. If someone says to you, this door opened at a local nonprofit. To me, it makes sense to walk through that door. That's taking the next right step, is to do that thing. It's a different kind of writing. It gives back to the community. To me, it comes as a sort of a tithe of my time. I think that is a next right step and I will take it. And those steps can be huge and they can be tiny. Sometimes the next right step is go to your first ever writers conference. Subscribe to Writer's Digest. Listen to 5 of Brian's, First Fridays. That's the next right step, and take that. Also, know that you can't control everything. When I was an agent, I would have authors be all tied in a knot because a publisher didn't take their book. And I'd say, well, I can't control what they do. I can't make them do it. And that's part of the thing is, you may want to be a writer, but you can't make a publisher take your book or your story.
No question about that.
Right. So just realize that you can't control everything. Also, when somebody gives you a piece of advice, usually you should take it, especially if it's, an editor or an agent or an established writer. If they offer you advice, take it.
They've learned the hard way, right?
It applies. Right. And take that advice. I don't know how many times I've had somebody ask me something and I'll say, well, what about doing this? Well, no, I'm not going to do that. Or, no, I don't want to do that. I'm like, well, then why are you asking me? So, a novelist, if every person who reads your novel says, boy, I had a real problem with that character, you might want to take that advice because that might be why you're not getting published. So ask for advice and then listen to the advice, and then just don't give up. Just keep trying. If this is your dream, keep trying. Learn, take advice, read books, continually learn, but don't give up. Keep doing it. Keep trying.
Well, excellent advice, Ann, and certainly from, you know, years of experience, lots of wisdom, learning the hard way, all those good things,
Oh
right?
yeah, done it all.
So thanks so much for joining us. It's really been a pleasure to talk with you again, and you know, best wishes going forward.
And you too, Brian. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
All right, bye.